We good to go? Are we good? Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone to the Albany Common Council's work session. It's our Wednesday, April 30th caucus and work session. Mr. Jimenez, please call the roll.
Adams, Anane, Vallorin. Clark is absent. Conti.
Here.
Farrell.
Here.
Flynn.
Here.
Roderick. Hoey.
Here.
Johnson is absent. Keegan. We do have on Zoom. Kimbrough.
Yes, here.
Love.
Here.
Robinson.
Here.
And Zemer's absent. 9 present. We're also joined by City Clerk Shaniqua Jackson, Research Council Jake Iceland, Legislative Director Brian Jimenez, Junior Policy Analyst Alyssa Kamara, Mayor Kathy Sheehan, as well as Commissioner Anne Marie Salmon and Harry. Not going to butcher your last name.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Jimenez. So with that, we'll start with the mayor, who's going to have a discussion with us about the landfill plan. Thank you for joining us, Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening. So I just wanted to come and give you an update on where we are with planning for the closure of the landfill. This is still very much a work in progress. The landfill is scheduled to, or the consultants have determined that the landfill has capacity until 2028, even potentially 2029. We're looking at continuing to reduce the amount of outside waste that we're taking so that we can extend the life of the landfill, because as we all know, the closure of the landfill will result in the city having to send its garbage somewhere else, and we'll have to pay a tipping fee. So while we won't be operating a landfill, the cost of tipping our garbage somewhere else exceeds the savings that we would have from the closure of the landfill. Even after the landfill closes, there's still monitoring that's required, there's work that will need to be done, and so we want to ensure that we have as soft a landing as possible, which is why we weaned ourselves off of the revenue, so that is no longer a concern. We have also worked really hard to ensure that we're being smart about debt. So fortunately, all of the debt for the expansion of the landfill is paid off. That was paid off in 2020 because we had anticipated that the landfill was originally going to close in 2020. So right now, there's no appreciable debt service associated with the landfill. We did ask for respondents to respond to an RFP on for proposals of what to do next with the landfill. There were 2 proposals that we received, both of them, and we can make them available to the council if you want to see them. Both of them proposed build transfer stations, and we ultimately determined that we can build a transfer station on our own. It's on our property. For less than what was proposed in either of those proposals. The benefit of running our own transfer station is also that we remain and have some control over the decisions that we make about our garbage. And so we had some concerns about relying on a commercial hauler and the open market because we then lose any control over what happens with respect to where that garbage is tipped and what we're able to do there. So right now, where we are in the process is that we are working with our consultants. We are required to go to the DEC, and we were required to meet with our other Answers partners, and so we have now met with them. We've explained to them what our plan is and that we intend to move forward with proposing to the council that we fund a transfer station. So My understanding from that meeting is that those municipalities are in support of us moving forward with this plan. They would then continue to, those that are using it would continue to tip for a fee at our transfer station. We're building, the proposal is to build enough capacity that we could also get revenue from others that choose to use our transfer station, and also build capacity so that we could actually do recycling at the transfer station. We currently are paying a pretty significant amount of money for recycling. As we know, that market has shifted dramatically from the early days when we made money on recycling to it can cost us up to, I believe, $100 per ton to tip for recycling. And so we would have the flexibility and the ability, if the market was favorable to it, to actually do recycling at this facility. We also, as we go through this planning process, we now have to then go to DEC. DEC has to give us approval and a permit to be able to build a transfer station, and then we would proceed with construction of a transfer station. So the gating items, we aren't even in the door at the DEC yet. We do not have an application completed. That's something that our consultants will be working on and our outside counsel will be working on to then put an application in. We're also going to be looking at potential funding sources. We have not begun to explore what grant opportunities might be available out there if we build a transfer station that can take on recycling, and so we're gearing up that process as well. So, we think, we anticipate that there will be obviously a gap that will need to be filled with respect to when we tip our own garbage. But it's very difficult to say what that is, because the tipping costs for garbage today could be significantly higher in 2029, 2028, 2029. It could be lower. It really, the market is that fluid. And so I think it's at this point that we're looking at what is that gap going to be, and from a budgetary standpoint, as we move towards 2028, 2029, what do we need to communicate to our residents with respect to that? So on the high end, we could be looking at our residents paying for waste disposal at rates similar to what are currently charged in the suburbs. So if somebody lives in Colony, they hire a private company that comes and takes their garbage. It could be as high as $400 a year in total for our residents. Right now it's $90, so I know that that's a big lift, but again, that's on the high end. And so the role of all of us is to work together, and the next mayor, to work together to reduce that cost as much as possible, to ensure that we're taking advantage of all the revenue opportunities that exist so that we can reduce that expense for our residents.
Okay.
Yep.
Ms. Farrow.
Thank you, Mayor, for sharing that information with us today. I think it's helpful to know at this stage, although we're years out, to know where we are in the process. One question I am curious about is, with the two proposals you mentioned, and then ultimately the determination that we should build our own transfer station, how significantly different were the cost of what they bid versus what we proposed the cost would be?
So the difference, there was a difference in cost. We can build a transfer station for less, we believe. The other component of it, though, that was very difficult to do apples and apples is what we were going to be charged per ton for disposal. And again, just as I can't tell you necessarily what that's going to be in 2028, 2029, that was similar to the responses that we received. So it was range. And so in looking at the uncertainty that presented, it also made those both of those proposals less attractive.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Farrell?
Thank you so much, and thanks for coming in and talking to us about this, Mayor. So, by, just clarification, by doing our own recycling, do you mean sorting it and then selling the materials to the markets ourselves, or actually doing a...
It could be any or all of the above. When we look at the capacity for a tipping, for a transfer station, the capacity that we're building, just because of the nature of constructing a transfer station, making it, 5,000 square feet bigger doesn't really cost that much more money. And so the idea is that we would build the capacity so that if the market were to shift and there were buyers for recycling, we would be able to do our own recycling. So yes, it would be tipping it on the floor, sorting it, and then it would get picked up by whoever was purchasing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a lot of municipalities do that and bring in revenue from, I know that metal, and there's some materials that still get
Yes.
a decent amount.
Yep.
And then just out of curiosity, which municipalities use our dump? Would we still be?
I don't want to miss. I know that the town of Guilderland does not use it, but they are part of our planning consortium. I believe it's. I can get you that.
Yeah, I'm just
I think
curious.
Altamont, Rensselaer, but I'd have to get that to you.
And then, have we looked, and I don't even know if there's space for it or what goes into it, just to clarify, so it might not even be an option, but looked at doing like commercial composting on the site, just because it is something that there currently is on a state level laws about large facilities composting food. And that is definitely expected to expand. In addition to that, if we could potentially, well, I'm not expecting, well, you're mayor, us to shift to food composting. It is a major part. I think it's 40%, 30 or 40% of the food stream. But it's also something that it could potentially bring in revenue, because there are currently state mandates on it, and those are expected to expand, particularly with all the, we are kind of a solid waste crisis in New York.
We went and looked at the food composting facility that they have in Bethlehem, and we've looked at our composting facility that we have and ways that we could expand at that location of our current composting facility to be able to facilitate doing food waste there. Right now, the economics of that haven't penciled out, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't pencil out. I mean, as you know, we sell compost now, but it's not food compost. So, but we sell our composted leaves and. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for being here and giving us this information. Is there any consultation going on, any long-term planning on what the landfill could be used for after it is closed that can generate some type of revenue for the city?
So at the time that the landfill was expanded, the permit required that the city return the landfill to Pine Bush. It added about $18 million in expense for an experiment that is not working, but it is still a requirement in the permit. There have been significant difficulties in doing it. Getting sand to stay on a slope is very difficult, but we had to provide the Army Corps of Engineers as well as the Albany Pine Bush with a permanent easement. So we don't really have full control of what that future might be. Certainly there are examples of solar panels and other reuses of landfills, but in the current state of play with what was required in the permit to build the expansion. Again, this predates all of us. Well, actually, Richard, I think, was here. That would be precluded at this point in time.
This is a question from Councilmember Keegan. Have the consultants discussed the projected costs for hauling and any measures that we can take to reduce the weight of hauling that may be revenue generating, such as biomass?
So certainly the efforts that we've undertaken to get food waste out of our waste stream with composting, and I think that, really efforts that are going to have to be taken, over the next few years will be to continue to find ways to reduce waste. We had talked about and looked at pay-as-you-throw. There are challenges in a city like Albany with respect to how do you do that in a way that does not disadvantage very low-income folks. And so I think those are all things that are going to have to be explored to continue to reduce the tonnage. We will have a very strong incentive to do that once we have to start paying to bring our garbage somewhere else. But the presumption that is being used is that the tonnage stays the same. That's what we're using for projections, and then you can obviously do the math and figure out that, for every ton that you can reduce, what we're actually shipping to a landfill would be a net savings.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for sharing this information. I have just fast questions. One is, I know the county at one time was looking at biodigesters, and has there been talk with the county to see if they would partner with us, as a community, to do something, moving forward with the situation, or is kind of everybody kind of in their own little kingdom?
I have not heard anything about that biodigester. I think they had some grant funding, but I don't know where that project is. Again, I think in any event, we are going to need a transfer station. There will still be garbage that has to be thrown away. There is still the opportunity to do our own recycling. And so I think we're going to have to build a transfer station. We're projecting that the cost of that will be approximately $18 million to build a transfer station. Again, that's debt that could be spread out over 25 years because it'll have, a longer than that useful life. And so, from an investment standpoint, that's the recommendation that is going to be made. Obviously, when we come with that recommendation, we'll have a fuller financial picture. We'll show the other proposals and what those costs would be. It's just we're not looking for the council to take any action at this time. And so right now I have DGS and our consultants really focused. We have to acquire a piece of land, and we've got to get this application process started. Because even if ultimately, the council were to decide next year, nope, we don't want to do this, we still have to start the application process. So that will be underway, and when we have that application complete, obviously we'll make that available to the council as well.
And my second question was, and you kind of answered it, do we know where this is going to be located, the transfer station?
So we are proposing to locate the transfer station at the current landfill. We have an option and have had an option for years to purchase a piece of property that we would utilize in order to ensure we have a sufficient footprint. So nothing would change with respect to our collection. Our trucks would still be collecting the garbage, bringing it to the landfill. We did explore using other landfills, using other transfer stations. The fuel costs get real expensive real fast when you have to go further than.
And that's a good area for it because it's not too populated.
Yeah.
So
I think the other thing is that there have been, there's been at least one private company that has proposed and had proposed, although they didn't propose it in this current RFP cycle, doing a transfer station at the port. That is not something that I would ever support. I think putting there's already a transfer station there for recycling, but putting a transfer station in an EJ community is wrong on so many levels, and I could not support it and would not propose it.
Thank you.
Mr. Conti?
Thank you. So maybe you answered this. Did you say, or can we anticipate something this year that this council would have to, like a bonding ordinance,
So
act on, or is that
I
something?
don't believe that there would need to be a bonding ordinance even in the 2026 budget, but I understand that there are a lot of questions.
Right.
And so in the absence of information, people think that there's something wrong. There's actually, things are moving very well. And, you know, we're confident that we're going to be able to build a transfer station on time. If I had been here a few months ago, I would have said on budget. Now, I don't know with tariffs what that might do to the budget, but certainly, you know, we believe that we're on a time schedule that will allow us to do what we need to do prior to the landfill closing.
Okay. So there's no action by the council this year?
No.
Okay. So
What you may see in the budget next year is, I think we already have the authority for the borrowing for the land acquisition, but you're probably going to see some contractual costs. You know, there will be things that will start to ramp up. And I know, you know, you and I have had many discussions about this in the past. You know, we can legally bond for consulting, but is that a smart thing to do? So.
And in terms of the waste disposal fee, that's going to, the current $90 fee per unit is going to?
I mean, again, right now, our total current refuse operations is, when you take into consideration the collection fee, the current collection fee, and the current tipping fees that we receive, right? We still are out of our operating budget are $2 million roughly to the negative of running that's all of our waste disposal. That's picking it up at the curb and operating the landfill. And so if you add to that a tipping fee, now some of our expenses are going to go down. You know, we have to factor that in. The operation of a transfer station is lower than the operation of the landfill. But the real unknown is, what is that tipping fee going to be? What is that new T&D expense? And so you could do wild things with a spreadsheet, right? As far as factoring in what that number is going to be. But even at the sort of most conservative, we're going to pay a high number, and we're going to have low revenue, you know, you're still looking at a per unit fee of, you know, it could be anywhere, again, roughly around $400 would cover the nut. Now, again, that's a big jump, but it is in line with what people pay for private pay in other municipalities.
And the tipping fee is also dependent on the availability of locations to actually dispose.
Right.
Is that, you know, my understanding is that the state is really not approving new landfills in the state.
So we're looking at
Or are we
where
gonna be
there's...
going out
yeah.
of state, or what are the options? Is that going to have to be an impact?
We're looking at where there's capacity. So, you know, there's certainly capacity in Western New York. And there are a couple of other landfills that have capacity. My understanding is that the Colony landfill is filling up pretty fast. So unclear how much longer that capacity will be there, but that is going to be the challenge for everyone.
Yeah.
throwing away garbage anywhere in upstate New York. You know, again, there are talks of putting it on barges or trains and, you know, and biodigesters and, you know, there's no shortage of technology out there that is proposed. It's just, it all comes with challenges attached to it, so.
And that all factors
Yeah.
into what the tipping fee might be. Yeah. Okay.
Ms. Farrell's got another.
Actually, that was my question, just because I'm very intimately aware that all of the dumps in New York will be closed in 15 to 21 years, so, and every year more are closing.
There is
yeah.
there's a desire to locate a burn facility at the port on the Rensselaer side. I know that that is something that has been explored. Again, a lot of opposition to that. So, you know, I was asking today about biochar, which is like the new hot thing where you burn wood wood waste, and it can be used as a fertilizer. But you know, again, that's a market that it's expected is going to become saturated almost immediately. So, you know, but this is something that we have folks that are working on, and I'm confident that they're going to continue to look at what they can do that will make sure that we are having minimal impact and doing this as cost effectively as we can.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, back into the agenda. So I'll be offering, in terms of the minutes, the April 21st meeting minutes for approval. It's got nothing under local laws. It's into ordinances held. The first one is Mr. Flynn, and Mr. Adams is 175324. It's an ordinance held. Can you talk about it?
We've Sergio and I just feel it's time to move on it. You know what I mean? It's been through a lot of committees. We've had a lot of private conversations with the mayor's staff and our staff, and we just feel, you know, Richard's got a new proposal on the floor, so we figure, we want to put it to a vote because we feel a lot of the people in the city of Albany, want to see action on this. So that's what we feel right now, right, Sergio?
So, you want to speak, Mr. Conti?
Yeah, so this is the original, as I understand, which is the total repeal, correct?
Which the original, yeah, the total repeal.
Right, because there have been different versions.
Now with all the amendments and everything, yeah, right.
Okay, and what's the amendment?
What's the amendment? We just want to repeal the whole cabaret law.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're not going through all the versions.
This is your original ordinance
This is the original one.
that provides for a total repeal.
Yes.
The agenda indicates pending amendment.
The title was updated last year or earlier this year. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, so we would be amending the
Oh, I see
title
what
as
you're saying,
well
Richard. I'm seeing
as
that.
part of that.
Okay. And as I recall, the effective date on this was immediate.
Right, and I've talked to Sergio about the effective date. I have no problem if it goes like a month or two after it becomes law. I mean,
So this
Sergio,
would be
whichever.
an immediate repeal with no transition, no alternative, nothing else.
Well, I think that him and I discussed an alternative if we did it like within 2 months or whatever, whatever you,
Well,
whatever it feels.
You're not proposing anything right now.
Right, I'm just saying that I understand your point because I thought the same thing, that if it went, obviously it goes into effect immediately. At least if we did it within a 2-month period, then we would have time possibly to actually put something else on the floor if there was some other discussion.
Right, and so any,
So this is currently in committee. It will require a separate motion to
A discharge it,
discharge
yes.
from committee.
Yeah.
Committee is having, has had discussion on this version, as well as another version, and members have had questions, additional information. My proposal had since been introduced, not discussed in committee, makes significant reforms and addresses the concerns that are out there. But this is a situation where still in committee, still being discussed, and the proposal is to pull this particular version, which when it was on committee for discussion, there was no consensus. There was a lot of questions about it, to pull that out and vote on it while the committee is still discussing. In the past, we've done discharge motions. They've been situations where there may have been an immediate need to pull something out. There was an urgency. It was non-controversial to short-circuit the committee process, and it would, this begin to set some precedents where you're pulling things out of committee where the committee is still in active discussion on a topic. And the topic does deserve a lot more discussion than straight repeal that this would propose. So I have some concerns about that. I think there's more discussion, and there's a route towards a compromise that really benefits everyone that could be made through the committee process.
right, and I believe there,
Yeah, I'm not
There's
disputing
some
that.
way
Again,
that
this has been on the table so long. It's been in, how many times committees? We've had private meetings. We've had Zoom meetings. So it's not like this is, you're saying precedent. It's not like this has been on one committee and we're doing this. Sergio and I feel that what our intent of this legislation is not what what the mayor's office and our office has come to an agreement on.
right, but it seems like we've kind of hit a point where there's not total agreement or
Right, there's no agreement
on moving forward. It's kind of sitting there, but you guys think it's to a point where you just want to move forward with it.
Right, from what our original intent was repealed, is that's what we're going to originally go back to, which was our original intent of this.
Okay,
Yeah. Yep.
Ms. Farrell.
I just wanted to note, in our leadership meeting, this was a big topic of conversation, and the mayor did say that she would absolutely be vetoing this. I know for me personally, I think we are a body of 15. We each represent our own ward. There are larger issues that impact the whole city, but I also think it's something that I personally like to ensure that when somebody comes from a ward where something happens a great deal, that I like to defer to that person. I like to make sure that they're included, and that not ward or, sometimes it's group or whatever. I just think that it's a respectful thing to do. It's an important thing to do. I will say, although I know that Mr. Flynn has someone that lives in his ward that is impacted by this as a business owner, his ward is not dramatically impacted by this. Mr. Adams does have a ward that has a commercial strip that perhaps that's what he's focused on. But I also know that the 6th ward has the most, like Lark Street is the one that we focus on. But I think it's important that we work with our colleagues, because this is something, for my ward, I don't have any businesses. It's not going to dramatically impact my residents. If there's a business, there was a business that was incredibly disrespectful to our codes staff, including physically putting their hands on the person, one of our code enforcement officers. They were playing music incredibly loud that was bothering the neighbors, and they didn't have a cabaret license. And there was something that could be done about it because of this process. So the purpose of a cabaret license, I completely agree. I think it's way too onerous. There needs to be changes on it, because we do need to make sure our business owners, if somebody wants to have amplified music, they should be able to have amplified music and be reasonable about it. But if if a business owner is being not reasonable about it, to have no accountability to the neighbors that live around the business is a problem. So that is, if it is discharge, I also agree with Mr. Conti. I think that we all have our own legislation, and it's our job to work through it. Sometimes it takes a long time. I mean, I know that everybody was going crazy over the ethics legislation, but that took years. There are controversial pieces that just take time that we have to work through. It's not about just stomping your feet and getting what you want in that moment. We have a process, and I think it's important to be respectful of our colleagues and respectful of our process. So I personally will be voting no on this, and I will be, if it is something that my colleagues do, I will be speaking very strongly about their choice to do that, because I think it's disrespectful.
And so, I know Mr. Ballerin wants to speak, but I'd like to hear from Mr. Adams. I mean, you're a part of this.
Well, the discussion around this, it goes deep, but some of the things that are being said and brought up currently now just kind of goes to me and Jack's point as to the concerns that if anyone had with the legislation. We've been working on this actively since last May, June, and we've had more than enough meetings. We've had countless meetings here in the council to speak about this, where residents and people in the community have come and shared their stories, their beliefs about the legislation, how it has impacted them personally, the community, and just business in general. So for council members here to now all of a sudden have concerns about something when this process has been ongoing and no one has said a word or put out an interest to me and Jack and said, hey, I read the legislation and I had this concern, this concern, this concern. Is it an opportunity for me to sit down? Or no one came to any of our planning meetings when we had this discussed, not too many people, and it wasn't until recently when Richard got appointed back to the council that he started to get involved on this. So the switch up from what we had presented before in the summer and all the conversations that we had with our staff to make sure that this legislation addressed the key issues, which was the application process, the bias that came along with the application process, the time process that it took for the application process, and just the overall decline in businesses being able to access a cabaret in time to have certain events or open. Through our discussion with our staff who handles this and their office, again, we are trying to address the fact that we are putting a lot on that office, a lot of work on that office, and we feel that this cabaret permit is something that its process takes a lot of time throughout the day when our clerk or any of their staff has to deal with this issue. This is also addressing the fact that when we have businesses that are having concerns with the community, that we already have pre-existing laws and ordinances in place to enforce and have checks and balances when it comes to this. Another part to that is the fact that we're trying to get this passed in order to then move on to the next step in order to make this a well-rounded legislation where the enforcement part is added, it's clear, to make sure that business owner as well as neighbors understand how businesses and music should operate within a reasonable volume. So that's one of the steps that we're trying to get to, but without voting this and getting this passed, we're stuck. Another part is the fact that the noise ordinance is in the law committee, I believe, which that has not been addressed, brought up, or conversations has started. So I'm still talking, so pardon. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of the different steps that work into this as to what me and Jack have been trying to work towards through this process. So again, to just bring it back around, we felt like because these last couple of months, we've been asking for this to have gone in committee several times, to have a wider discussion, to have a more bigger discussion with business owners, with Mr. Conti, to be able to discuss and have dialogue about the path this was going to go. However, things have been stalled, and so things have been taking a lot of time, and we have not been able to have that big discussion, but at the same time, the viewpoints are completely different. Richard's legislation, what he is supporting, is doubling down and trying to correct some of the mistakes that the previous legislation missed. What me and Jack is trying to do is trying to get rid of something to allow business owners and allow freedom and flexibility here in our city that residents have been asking for. So that's my
Right,
spiel.
so you all haven't gotten together and tried to talk through what Richard's proposed changes, or? I mean,
We have, we've
been with
looked
us.
at it, we've been discussing it, but I'm saying like all of us in terms of being able to look at his legislation, being able to look at ours, and if you want to compare, but it's no comparison because they're complete opposite in what they're trying to do. So again, it's trying to find a middle ground, which Richard believes is putting in those corrections to the current legislation, but there's still the overall issue that the permit process, it's still racially biased to a lot of people, it's still slow, and it still does not change the enforcement aspect of anything currently. So it's just adding stuff in that things are going to stay the same. It's the status quo. We need to change things, which me and Jack believe this is going to do. This is going to allow business owners who want to open business and entrepreneurs to have flexibility and the opportunity to do so, that they don't have to hide in the dark and risk getting their business shut down or risk being a danger to the community. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mr. Adams. Mr. Boweren?
Thank you. So I want to just take a step back, and one, I want to thank all of my colleagues who've been working on this behind the scenes, and all the staff that have been working on this in front and behind the scenes. So this came up last August, and we had 2 public meetings on this topic. And based of the feedback that we received from residents and other colleagues, there was definitely some concerns about the ordinance as it was written. So I'm very appreciative for the fact that the sponsors and Councilmember Contis and the staff and city officials were willing to take some time to try to see if we can get a compromise. So I think we could all agree that the current system that we have is not working. I think that's something that we could all agree on, and that there was definitely things we wanted to do to make it better. Some things that I can tell you, I think we've all received some feedback. If someone gets a cabaret license in October, why are they reapplying in January? You know, that's not effective. So we had several meetings on this behind, with Councilmember Conti, Flynn, and Adams, as well as other city officials, to try to get a compromise. Some of the ideas that were put out there, and I thought we were close to a compromise at one meeting. I thought we were pretty close to a compromise at one meeting, where we spoke about having the process, instead of being an annual, but be a 3-year renewal. And it wouldn't be a 3-year by annual, it'd be 3-year by month. So if you got your license in June, you didn't have to get your license until the following June, 3 years from now, versus January 1st. We talked about addressing the time so that it capped at 30 days with a passable request for extension of 15 days, which would be a total of 45 days. And beyond that, it would go into a automatic, acceptance of the license. We also talked about eliminating the public hearing, as well as making it so if it gets denied, there's an actual explanation by whatever department denies it, so it doesn't fall on our, city clerk department to try to explain it to the business. So there was a lot of good conversation about trying to get that compromised, move forward to get something on the books now for our residents and for our business owners, to create more stability on this topic now while we looked at the broader scope. Because the two main ideological conflicts that we had were, one, believed it should be a permit system or licensing system like we have now, and one was more of an as-is, right. So those were the two different ideological conflicts that we had in those conversations. So the thought and the goal of my hope was to try to get some kind of compromise that we could move forward now while we worked out those other two conflicts that can be dealt with addressing other issues like the noise ordinance, like other potential concerns that were being brought up. So that compromise didn't get moved forward. And again, I appreciate all the work from everybody, including we had the chief of police, we had head of our code enforcement, Rick LaJoyce, we had Fayand, who is head of our neighborhood, commissioner of our neighborhood department. So we had a lot of individuals in the room trying to walk us through those efforts. So, so bring us back to where we are now. So where we are now is we have two different bills in front of us. So that's where we are. I personally believe both bills deserve a vote. But I also believe they deserve a vote in committee. I think they should go to committee and get an up and down vote, and then move forward from there. I understand the concerns from the sponsors. I do. I can tell you we are working very hard to try to get a couple. It's been difficult to get planning committee meetings organized. I'd like to have a committee meeting where this is the only topic on the agenda, because I know that in the past we've had other topics and this has not, been able to give them all the time that I think it deserves. I think part of it was because we were trying to get compromises on this. So, I know we're working on getting a date, and if we can work on that, if this does not get dismissed, I'd like for us to work and have a date for this month, and then I'm going to call it for a vote, and get an up and down vote in committee. I think it deserves that, but I do believe it should go through the committee process. So, I do think, again, we have great diversity in our body, and that is not a negative. And there's times where we can come together and get a compromise, and there's times where we just have to accept, let the votes fall where they fall. And this is one case where we're going to have to allow the votes to fall where they'll fall. But again, I believe it should go to committee, and then let the votes fall where they fall. Thank you.
So, Mr. Conti?
Yeah.
So with,
No, if we want to really
Okay.
belabor the
right,
discussion
so,
tonight.
right,
I
so
do
with,
want to
with
say
that, with all
we-
this being said, I mean.
We have had those discussions private, but, the committee, majority of the committee was not a beneficiary of those discussions that we had with department heads that are involved. And so they don't have the benefit of getting that perspective. And that's what could happen in a committee meeting where we fully discuss that. The ordinance I introduced takes the elements of what we were discussing, as the 3-year license, rolling expirations, streamlines the application process, makes very clear what departments look at, gets rid of the public hearing, and also eliminates or seeks to eliminate anything that might lend itself to bias and consideration. So, I mean, you should look at what I introduced. It really does address a lot of the concerns that are out there and makes a significant change in the process. Total repeal goes us back to something 10, 15 years ago that was the cause of creating this cabaret thing in the first place, because there were no rules, everything was all over the place, and you know, it's not going to impact me, it's going to impact everybody, because it's, you know, when you don't have any rules for anybody, it's all over the place.
Okay.
So
So with
that's a consideration.
With that being said, I mean, again,
I think, you know, Sergio, I agree, you know, if we can get a committee meeting within the next week or two, before the next, I think that's reasonable. Right, Sergio, I mean, but we don't want to last too much longer, it seems like. Summer's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if we can get a committee meeting within the next week or two, then we'll be fine to hold it.
I
If we
know
can.
staff has been working on trying to.
I know.
work on that.
So we will continue. I can't guarantee you next week or two, but I will guarantee you that it will be only your bill on the agenda when we have the meeting. So it won't be any other bills but yours for us to discuss, for us to bring in any officials people want to have brought in, and have an up and down vote.
So how does mine fit into that?
Yours would go next. So, and that's to be quite honest, because if the committee votes for total repeal, then that's what gets moved forward to the council. And then we would move, you know, if the body votes for total repeal, then that's the decision of the body. If it gets vetoed and the body doesn't have the numbers to override the veto, then we have to go to the second option. So I mean,
Right.
that's part of
I
why
think
I was hoping
All right,
to get a
I-
compromise.
Yeah.
Right, but if through
it-
discussion, they can come up with a compromise, it would, I mean, we're talking running through one process and then coming to a conclusion, which could take.
I agree. I mean, that's why I was hoping to get a compromise, because if we get a compromise, we can get something passed.
Vote in considering just
Right
total
away.
repeal, you also need at the same time consider the alternative, so, but,
I'm open to that, but I'd want at least to give the one bill the option to get through. I mean, look, if it passes by 8 votes and it gets vetoed and there's no 2 other votes that are going to switch, then we can start the process on the second round. But, you know, I'd want to give that one bill.
Ms. Frederick,
Hold on 1 second, because we had no problem with our bills in the same meeting. Oh, if you don't want to have the same meeting, that's different.
No, that's what I said. I'm not,
Okay.
I'm sorry, just to clarify.
All right, I have to leave that.
I would want to give the bill that's been waiting longer an up or down vote, okay, by itself. No other bills near it. By itself, it gets its up and down vote. If you've got the 3 votes in the committee to repeal, then that gets moved forward. If you don't have the 3 votes to committee, then it's gone through the committee process and the committee is done with it. And then we move forward with the other bill. I think that's the best way. Again, I would love for everyone to get back in the room and try to get a compromise, because, you know, I think that's actually the most effective way to get something for business owners today. But, you know, I respect all my colleagues' different perspectives.
thank you, Mr. Ballard. Ms. Frederick?
Point of clarification, Chair, or Chair of Planning, that is, so would you, if the full repeal does not go through with the votes, are you then discussing the second bill in that same meeting, or are you having a secondary meeting to discuss the second bill?
We would have a secondary meeting to discuss the secondary bill. I think the first bill, if we do it right, we're going to have different department officials coming in, probably have a lengthy public comment section, and then probably a good spirited debate before we went for a vote. So I can see a two-hour meeting. So, you know, I wouldn't see us being able to discuss anything else and give it its due time. So If it doesn't pass, we would then set up another meeting at a different date to discuss the other bill.
Okay, you're the chair. I think that's kind of taking a long way around, but it's. So, okay, that's where we're at with ordinance 1753-24. They're gonna further discuss it. Oh, yeah, so, okay, yeah, I think we're good. Good, thanks. Jack is gone. All right, so on to the next ordinance. It's mine, ordinance 2691-24. It's amended, passed. It's the honorary street namings. There were some changes made to streamline it, give, and just clarify basically how we were doing it and to clarify the process. So that went through.
Quick question on that. I mean, I really haven't gone through to notice the changes. I noticed it does give the auditor and the treasurer.
Yeah, and added those two in.
Is there anything beyond that, a significant change?
There were a couple of small changes. We'd sent some language over to Corporation Council today. Was expecting a response back, but it reflected, or it was in part their edits and our edits. The auditor and treasurer get two to be on par with the mayor and council president now, and the council members. I mean, I don't have the rest of the sheet, but it was a lot of smaller changes.
Yeah. 5 signs.
The application sponsors.
Tenure duration.
All right,
But a copy of that can be sent out for
and then, yeah, and then some clarification, because the last time we went through this, I had this big issue with, like, honoring folks that were still alive that, I mean, you could be alive and have had an impact and move forward with it, but I think some of the ones that we were doing, I don't think were necessarily.
well, as I recall, you were the original sponsor.
Yeah, and everyone was mad at me, too, so, still mad at me. But so, there are changes made, and so, it was amended, it was discussed in general services and moved forward, so we'll be taking that up. I won't actually be here, so, Jenny, will you take care of this for me, for the meeting? So that was that ordinance. On to resolutions introduced by Mr. Adams, resolution of the Common Council recognizing May 2025 as Bike Month in the City of Albany. All co-sponsors. I mean, everybody likes bikes, right? So, the next resolution 315125R by Mr. Hoey is resolution of the Common Council in support of protecting neighborhood Social Security offices, Medicare, Medicaid. Mr. Conti, you had some reservations about some language in the right. So I mean, everyone read this, right? So I mean, I personally don't. You don't have any qualms about recognizing specific legislation, do you?
Yeah, especially I'm going to be going on Social Security real soon, so I want to make sure I can go to an office.
Yeah, you want it clear. So.
Is that why?
I've been paying in for like 40 or 50 years now.
And so I'd like to be a co-sponsor. I'm not going to be here, so I'm sure most of us will. I don't know, Richard, you want to? Oh. Yeah, okay. All right, that was resolution 315125. Next, by Ms. Keegan, resolution 325125, is resolution of the Common Council commemorating the week of May 5th through May 9th as Public Service Recognition Week. We're all co-sponsors on that also. Then next, resolution 335125R, it's a resolution of the council directing the city clerk to hire Garrett Schaff for the program director for the CPRB. And we,
This is the person who is the director of the CPRB?
Yeah, and so we got to get him into the
Yes, I'll
You
reach out to
get him,
him.
is he in town?
He's not in town
this point?
yet, so I can have him come in remotely if we're allowed that, so.
Okay, all right.
All right, so this is not a actual, technically, it's not a position within the city. I mean, the city clerk has the authority to hire their own staff. This person, though, and I guess the way you did the CPRB, it has to go through the council. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I
This is considered a council employee.
Council
Council
employee.
employee, but it's the
He's the program director for the CPRB.
Works for the CPRB, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Next, resolutions 345125R by Ms. Zamer, resolution of the Common Council recognizing May 2025 as Jewish Heritage Month. All co-sponsors. Yeah. Next, Mr. Flynn's resolution 355125R, resolution of Albany Common Council recognizing and celebrating May 2025 as Mental Health Awareness Month in the city of Albany. Co-sponsors. The next, by Mr. Adams, resolution, the Common Council honoring May 2025 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the city of Albany. Again, co-sponsors. Then next, by Ms. Keegan, 375125R, resolution of council recognizing May 1st, 2025 as International Workers' Day. Same, co-sponsors. Then next, Mr. Robinson wanted to do an item by majority consent, which Mr. Jimenez you're gonna send out, or it gets sent out?
Yeah, we can have that drafted and sent out or by the end of Friday.
Okay. Again, Mr. Robinson, you want to just kind of speak briefly about?
Sure. So the resolution is going to be honoring a young man that lives in my district, Mr. Jaden Goodby. He is a senior at Green Tech High School, and he'll be graduating this year. And so I wanted to honor him because he has done some extraordinary work within the community. And the reason why I would like to introduce for majority consent is because although he's graduating probably not near till the end of June, there's some family obligations I may have on Monday evenings during the council sessions where my schedule is going to be unpredictable. So I want to make sure that I'm able to honor him before he graduates.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Okay, then lastly, under resolutions held by Ms. Love, 163225R is a resolution of council honoring the life and legacy of Winnie Mae Everett and renaming a portion of Sheridan Avenue in her honor. Passed General Services Committee on the 23rd of April with positive recommendation, so we'll be moving forward with that. Can you make me a co-sponsor for that also? So that is it for the agenda and it for the meeting, unless someone else has something. All right, we're adjourned.